Sharing an HIV diagnosis with friends and family can be really challenging. You truly learn who your good friends are and who your family is that's going to be able to support you through this journey. My family's from Boulder. They're very weird. So my dad is a control freak and owns stock now in all the drug companies because he didn't feel that they were researching HIV medications, in particular on women, fast enough. And so now he has voting stock in many of the companies and encourages them to include women in the trials. That's my dad. My mother is a Boulder woo-woo kind of gal, and she consulted an astrologer. And the astrologer said, and remember this is 1993, and so the astrologer said, well, she just has to live to 2010 and there'll be a cure, which actually ironically was pretty close to right for the one person in Berlin. But however, to make it to 2010, according to the astrologer, what I was supposed to do was strip nude every full moon, go out in my backyard, bathe myself in the light of the full moon and the cleansing rays. And that was going to help me make it to 2010, complete with the drama. And I'm thinking, I live in downtown Boulder. I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to scare my neighbors horribly. And I really don't think I need the world to see that much of me. So I've done it once, just in case, to hedge my bets. And otherwise, I have really tried to do everything my doctors say and that I've researched and found out. My sister's a little bit harder because we moved around a lot when I was in the military, when my dad was in the military when I was little. And many people remember where they grew up and where they went to high school or even where they went to junior high. I don't actually even remember where I went to kindergarten. I have to kind of think back and count on my fingers. But the one constant of my childhood is my sister. And of course she saw some awful, frightful video early on about how people are going to die and they die quickly and it's awful and painful. So for her, my living with HIV, on one hand, she's really proud of me and what I do. And on the other hand, she's very afraid of losing me because she says, and in a way it's actually quite true, when I die, her childhood leaves with me because there'll be nobody else who remembers it. And that's hard. That's hard. Friends has been different. And it continues to be an ongoing battle because I grew up in Boulder and I went to Fairview High School. And I was so excited to move back to Boulder in '93 because I had about 20 friends from high school that still lived in Boulder, and we used to travel in this huge pack and we would have so much fun. It was kind of, even when I was 30, it felt like I was still back in high school, and bad behavior ensued. However, as I started to share with my friends why I moved back to Boulder from being an executive chef in Madison and being a clothes buyer in Boston and all these great things, they never thought I'd come back to Boulder. And truthfully, I came back to Boulder actually because I was worried about getting sick, not having the support of my mom and dad. And I've been very open about my status since 1994. I've actually been on the Speakers Bureau at BCAP. However, as I told friends, what I realized was that they didn't have the information, so I educated those. After a while, being the fountain of HIV education and information for your friends, when they're ignorant and they're not making any effort, gets to be really tiresome. In 1994, we also had a lot of people who were dying. It was very different. People call those the bad days. And I think that's a euphemism. Those were the dying days. Those were the days where I would come in and I would do my RC shift. And I would flinch when there was a candle because we light candles to remember people who died. And I would wonder, who's that next friend of mine who's died, or who is maybe somebody I haven't even met yet, who I'm no longer going to be able to meet. And that was what was going on. And so I was planning my memorial service, and I was putting long-range healthcare in place, and I was talking about going on medication. And according to my friends who were having children and changing jobs and divorcing their first husband because they were having their affair with their second husband, my life was really not anything that they could understand. Many times they were compassionate about my life, but kind of when people, and I wouldn't constantly talk about it either, but when I would say I can't have lunch at 1 o'clock because I'm taking empty stomach meds and I need to take those at 1 o'clock, and they wouldn't understand, or they would say, oh, you're so high maintenance. I would think that they didn't understand and weren't supporting me. So I look at those 20 friends. I just had my 30th high school reunion. I'll date myself a little bit, because trust me, when you're HIV positive, every year is a victory. Yeah, I am in passing acquaintance with 2 of them, and not very close with any of the rest, because they weren't willing to support me in what I was doing. So I have a very interesting story about friends from high school, and this was actually not somebody I was even really close to, but I went to some pre-reunion parties, and this guy came up to me and started talking to me, and I knew that he knew about my status because I've been pretty open about it. And he started talking to me, and all of a sudden he reached out and smacked me in the forehead. And I thought, okay, I definitely don't know you well enough for physical assault on my body. And I'm like, what are you doing? Turns out he's joined a religious group, a Christian group that sadly believes that HIV is demonic, and he was trying to exorcise the HIV from my body by smiting my brow with his holy hand, which I thought, I'm going to smite your holy something with my hand. But when we talk about people judging us and stigma and friends that we know, oftentimes judgment's really subtle, and other times it's really not subtle. But for my story, I know many people who have other stories, and I want to be clear, I'm not against Christian churches, any of that kind of stuff, but when people judge HIV and HIV positive people, it's just not acceptable. I consider myself blessed as an HIV positive woman, which confuses people sometimes. I actually was married before I found out that I was HIV positive. So I have never had to go out and try and figure out how to date as an HIV positive person. That is something that I can't even begin to fathom. And I have a number of friends that have to negotiate that tricky course, and I have such empathy for them. It's not easy being married and finding out that you're HIV positive, and my husband and I really thought that it was going to be the death of our relationship. But we were smart, because we, again, did the research. That'll be a common theme here. Looked up how one can have protected sex, safer sex, because no sex is entirely safe, safer sex, and how we could have intimacy in our relationship, and how we could get support for me being HIV positive and him being HIV negative and him staying HIV negative. And I have to tell you that people ask me why I do so well with HIV and why I have so much fight and so much energy. And it's because I have my husband who supports me, and he believes in me he's a physicist, so it'll kill him. He believes in me 110%, because that's not possible if you're a physicist. But, he does. He believes in me and he supports me. And even when I stigmatize myself and I judge myself and I get down on being positive, he doesn't let me stay there. Other relationships, yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to meet new people and to meet people in social environments, especially when they ask me what I do. My husband and I go to a lot of his business things, and we're there and we're talking, and of course it's America, so everybody always says, well, what do you do? Because that's that's the validity check, right? Like, can I talk to you? Do we have something in common? And it's very hard, because I used to try and come up with something cute, like I'm retired early, or some excuse kind of thing, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, but we don't have any kids, or whatever. And I finally realized that was stigmatizing, that I was stigmatizing myself. And so now I introduce myself as exactly what I am, and I say I'm an HIV positive activist and educator. Now, if they don't know what to do with that, that's their fault. But I have seen people start off in one place, and we're talking and we're having a great time, and all of a sudden, as I start talking about my activism work and the Positive Women's Network and BCAP and all these organizations that I love, and they're sort of sidling away. And it's like, mother, may I take 3 gigantic steps away from the diseased pariah. And it's like, that makes it hard to meet new people, because you start developing a shell. And so constantly I have to remind myself that it's their problem, it's not mine.